Somewhere over southern England in the summer of 1944, a German reconnaissance pilot photographed an airfield that did not exist. He saw runways. He saw rows of fighter aircraft parked in neat lines along the tarmac. He saw fuel trucks, maintenance sheds, even laundry hanging on lines between what looked like barracks tents. Every detail his training told him to look for was there, and his photographs went back to a German intelligence officer who marked the position on a map as a legitimate target. None of it was real. The aircraft were rubber, inflated with air compressors and painted to catch the light exactly the way metal does from 3,000 feet up. The laundry was staged. The fuel trucks were wood and canvas stretched over a frame. And the men who built it, the ones who wanted a German bomber to find this exact spot and drop its entire payload on nothing but air and rubber, were not commandos or engineers by trade. Many of them were art students. This is the story of the American unit that turned illusion into a weapon, and made German bombers destroy targets that Americans had built specifically to be destroyed. If this story earns your time, a like and a subscription help it reach the people who care about this history. The unit responsible was called the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. Most of the men who served in it never used that name. To each other, and eventually to history, they were the Ghost Army. Activated in January of 1944, the unit numbered roughly 1,100 men, an almost absurdly small force for what it was expected to accomplish. Its mission, according to the plan drawn up by two Army staff officers named Ralph Ingersoll and Billy Harris, was to impersonate entire divisions. Not disguise a position. Not hide equipment. Convince German intelligence that tens of thousands of soldiers, tanks, and aircraft were somewhere they were not, while the real units, those phantom formations, were supposed to represent moved somewhere else entirely, undetected. The idea did not originate in America. It grew out of British deception work in North Africa, particularly Operation Bertram before the Second Battle of El Alamein, where dummy tanks and fake supply dumps had helped hide the true direction of Montgomery's attack. American planners studied what the British had done and built something larger and more mobile, designed specifically for the fast-moving campaign they expected once the invasion of France began. The men recruited into the unit were, by ordinary military standards, an unusual group. The visual deception arm, formerly the 603rd Camouflage Engineers, drew heavily from art schools in New York and Philadelphia. Painters, set designers, advertising illustrators. Men who understood, in a way that most infantry officers did not, exactly how the human eye gets fooled by shadow, color, and proportion when viewed from altitude. Among them was a young artist named Bill Blass, who would go on to become one of the most famous fashion designers in American history. Another was Ellsworth Kelly, who became a major figure in post-war American abstract art. A photographer named Art Kane, later renowned for his work in music and portrait photography, served in the same ranks. These men spent their war not primarily firing rifles but inflating rubber tanks, painting canvas to mimic the specific wear patterns of aircraft skin, and arranging fake equipment with the same attention to composition they would later bring to galleries and magazine covers. The unit's equipment included inflatable versions of nearly every vehicle in the American arsenal. Sherman tanks, trucks, artillery pieces, aircraft. A single 93-pound rubber tank, inflated by a small air compressor, could be made to look, from a reconnaissance photograph, indistinguishable from 30 tons of real steel. But the visual deception was only one part of the operation, and by itself it would not have been convincing enough to fool an experienced German intelligence officer studying a photograph closely. The Ghost Army combined it with two additional layers that made the illusion function as something closer to a complete performance. The first was sonic deception, handled by a unit that mounted powerful speakers on half-tracks and broadcast carefully recorded sound effects, the specific noise of tank engines idling, of trucks being loaded, of infantry moving through a bivouac area, recordings detailed enough that they had been made by combat engineers who understood exactly what a division on the move actually sounded like at various distances. Played at night, sometimes audible for miles across open countryside, these recordings gave German listening posts genuine acoustic evidence that a large force was assembling in a location where, in reality, nothing but 1,100 men and a few hundred pounds of rubber existed. The second layer was radio deception, carried out by signal operators who did not simply broadcast fake messages but painstakingly mimicked the individual sending style, the specific rhythm and cadence, of real radio operators from the units they were impersonating. German signals intelligence, listening for these individual quirks the way a handwriting expert studies a signature, heard exactly what it expected to hear. A specific division's radio traffic, continuing from a specific location, even after the actual division and its actual radios had moved 100 miles away. Airfields were a particular specialty, because an airfield made an unusually convincing target from the air. A real operational airfield displayed a distinctive and recognizable pattern from altitude, aircraft parked in specific dispersal patterns to reduce blast damage from a single bomb, support vehicles clustered in predictable locations, the visible wear of tire tracks on grass and dirt taxiways. The Ghost Army's camouflage engineers studied these patterns from real American airfields and reproduced them with enough fidelity that German reconnaissance photography, examined by trained interpreters, read the fake sites as genuine operational bases. This approach drew directly on a much larger British program that had been running since the very beginning of the war. Colonel John Turner, an engineer and retired Air Ministry officer, had been tasked as early as September of 1939 with building a national network of decoy airfields and factories across Britain, known as K sites for daytime decoys and Q sites for night decoys illuminated to mimic an active airfield from above. Turner's programs eventually expanded into what became known as starfish sites, decoy towns built to simulate the glow and fires of a city already under attack, drawing follow-on waves of German bombers away from real population centers. Historian Colin Dobinson's research, drawing on Turner's own wartime estimates, suggests these decoy sites diverted somewhere in the range of 968 tons of German bombs onto empty countryside rather than onto real British targets. The Americans, arriving later in the war with the specific mission of supporting a fast-moving continental campaign rather than defending a home island, adapted this same core principle, deliberately built targets, for the ground war in France. The Ghost Army's most significant contribution came before it ever set foot in Europe, as part of their vast deception effort known as Operation Fortitude, designed to convince German intelligence that the main Allied invasion would land at Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy. Dummy landing craft, fake camps, and simulated radio traffic, some of it involving the same techniques the 23rd would later use in France, helped keep a substantial German force pinned in the wrong sector of the coast during the critical day. After the actual landings. Once in France, the unit conducted more than 20 distinct deception operations, often within a few hundred yards of the actual front line, moving as the Allied armies moved and setting up phantom formations wherever Allied commanders needed German attention drawn away from a real and vulnerable position. Operation Brest, in the late summer of 1944, marked the first time the unit combined visual, sonic, and radio deception simultaneously in the middle of an actual battle, rather than in a rear area during the build-up to an operation. In March of 1945, Operation Viersen convinced German forces that the Allies intended to cross the Rhine far north of the point where the actual crossing was planned, contributing to an attack that met sharply reduced resistance at the true crossing point. The danger in this work was real, even though the men carrying it out were rarely engaged in direct combat in the traditional sense. Every man in the unit carried a weapon, typically a short carbine, but they lacked the heavy arms of a genuine combat formation, which left them acutely vulnerable if German forces ever discovered what they actually were. 3 men of the 23rd were killed in action during the war, and roughly 30 were wounded, casualties suffered while constructing and maintaining illusions rather than while directly engaging an enemy force. Bernie Bluestein, one of the artists recruited from a Cleveland art college, said in a later interview that he had not fully understood the risk when he enlisted, and that if the Germans had ever discovered what the unit actually was, retaliation against men caught constructing fake positions this close to the front would very likely have been severe. He served anyway, inflating tanks and painting canvas in fields within earshot of the actual fighting. The full scale of what the Ghost Army accomplished was not made public for decades. The operational details remained classified until 1996, more than 50 years after the war ended, and many of the men who served in the unit went to their graves without their own families knowing precisely what they had done in Europe. A later Army analysis of the unit's missions concluded that few groups of so few men had ever had so great an influence on the outcome of a major campaign. Historians studying the unit's full record have estimated that its deceptions helped save somewhere between 15,000 and 30,000 American lives, by drawing German attention, German reconnaissance flights, and in some cases German bombing runs directly onto positions that held nothing more valuable than rubber, plywood, and recorded sound. In February of 2022, the surviving members and the memory of those who had already died were recognized with the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest civilian honors the United States government can bestow, for a mission that had spent half a century as one of the war's best-kept secrets. Consider what that German reconnaissance pilot actually accomplished when he photographed that airfield in southern England and marked it as a target. He did his job with complete professional competence. He read the pattern exactly as his training told him to read it. Dispersed aircraft. Support vehicles in the correct positions. The ordinary human clutter of an operational base, laundry on a line, tire tracks in the grass, all present and accounted for. He was not fooled because he was careless. He was fooled because a group of painters, illustrators, and set designers had studied exactly what a trained eye looks for from 3,000 feet, and had built something that satisfied every one of those expectations using nothing but rubber, wood, and paint. Somewhere over Normandy or the Rhineland, a German bomber crew flew a mission, found their target exactly where intelligence told them it would be, and dropped their bombs with total confidence that they were destroying something that mattered. They were destroying exactly what the Americans wanted them to destroy. Air. Rubber. And a few £100 of canvas that had already done its job the moment the camera clicked. If this story reached you, a like helps it find others who care about the real history behind this war. If you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. And if someone in your family served in the Second World War, tell me about them in the comments. These stories survive because people like you keep them.